honored guests. We have former ministers, presidents, parliamentarians, dear ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, ICD, for the invitation, and Mark. I feel very honored to be here. And are we not all very lucky just to be able to gather here in Berlin for a couple of days and discuss the importance of democracy? Something that definitely is not to be taken for granted. We have heard different figures here. Mr. Davor Filipovic yesterday told us that 71% of the world's population do not live in democratic countries. And some of what I'm going to talk about today has already been said, but I think we can also repeat some things to refresh our knowledge. Democracy and peace are of immense importance to our global community, and these two concepts are often spoken about in tandem, and that is for a good reason. Democracy and peace are deeply intertwined, each nurturing and sustaining the other. Democracy and peace are universal and related values. When one is lacking, the other is endangered. But peace and democracy do not come easy. The democratic peace theory suggests that democracies do not enter into war with one another, and thus peace reigns in democracies. Today, I will explore how democracy fosters peace, how peace strengthens democracy, and why this relationship is crucial for the prosperity of nations, and also the current threats that we face today. I will also include some reflections of my home country, Sweden. So to begin, let us define democracy. At its core, democracy is a system of government where power lies with the people. It is characterized by free and fair elections, the rule of law, and the protection of human rights, and the participation of citizens in political decision-making. Democracy is just not about casting a vote. It is about the continuous engagement of citizens in the government process, ensuring that their voices are heard and their rights protected. But we must also remember that using your voice requires action. You need to show up. In some countries, you need to register to vote beforehand, which can sometimes be complicated. And not everybody is willing to do that, especially if one does not feel part of society, if the social contract is not fulfilled. For example, in the public space. Things like garbage collection, graffiti, or healthcare. In Sweden, we have the least amount of hospital beds in all of Europe. In Sweden, there's this very successful company leader and previous chairman of Confederation of Swedish Enterprise. And in 2017, he uttered the following sentence, which has then become viral. What the, excuse my language, hell do I get for my money? Sweden has one of the highest tax pressures in the world. And for people that pay a lot in taxes, this is a valid question. A question that questions the social contract, and this can in extension become a threat to democracy. An unwillingness to get involved in how a country should be governed. Yesterday we heard Monica Elena speak about the pillars of peace, and I'm going to go over them a little bit again today. Just like she said, peace is more than the absence of war. It encompasses the presence of justice, equality, and security. Peace involves creating conditions where individuals can live without fear, where communities can thrive without conflict, and where societies can progress without oppression. True peace is built on the foundations of social justice and economic stability. And while a lot of countries that are democracy have peace with other countries for a long time, a lot of them now experience internal abrasions, with groups acting against each other. And this is something we need to be aware of, because peace is fragile and so are democracies. And peace and democracy, they need each other to thrive. Where's the button? So how does democracy promote peace? Well, democracies, by their very nature, encourage dialogue and negotiation. When people have a say in how they are governed, they are more likely to resolve conflicts through peaceful means. And there are a few ways that democracy fosters peace. We have representation and inclusion. Democracies ensure that diverse groups are represented in the decision-making processes. This inclusivity reduces the likelihood of marginalized groups resorting to violence to have their voices heard. But an increased threat against this in many Western European countries is the increased number of immigrants from countries where the clan is more important than the government. One does not trust the government, one does not trust the police, one trusts only the clan. This means, and this is a threat to the rule of law. And this is a problem we have unfortunately experienced a lot in Sweden lately. We have a population of 10 million people. 20% of Swedish inhabitants are born outside of Sweden, and the majority of them come from countries where the clan is more important than the government, and that's the voice you trust. And these people will vote for the political parties or candidate that makes the most promises to these clans and not necessarily what is best for the country. So inclusion is important, but for the right reasons, otherwise the system will turn corrupt. And we have the rule of law. Democratic systems uphold the rule of law, providing mechanisms for resolving disputes fairly and justly. This reduces the chances of conflicts escalating into violence. In Europe, though, corruption is a growing problem when criminals infiltrate different aspects of government-controlled businesses. I recently listened to a lecture by a Belgian police officer, and he said the rate that corruption has increased in modern time is unparalleled, and the amount of money criminals can use for bribes, they have never-ending resources. He also mentioned a couple of examples. A person can be the mayor of a city. A criminal shows up with a big bag of money and says, I need you to permit me to build this or do this or open this casino. The politician says no, and then the criminal says you have two choices now. Either you will be at the bottom of a lake or you leave your position. And this happens more and more in Europe. Economic stability. Democracies tend to have more economic stabilities as transparent governance attracts investment and promotes sustainable development. Economic stability is a crucial factor in maintaining peace. But today, a lot of countries have high unemployment. The cost of food have risen, interest rates have become a lot higher, and we have also seen an increase in homelessness. And this affects economic stability. Democracies are more likely to protect human rights, which reduces grievances that can lead to conflict. When people feel their rights are respected, they are more inclined to support peaceful coexistence. But there are emerging threats to human rights, and the most serious is terrorism and violent extremism. The current geopolitical situation has become unstable in the past 2 years, and right now there is no light in the tunnel, nor in the Russia-Ukraine war or in the conflict of Gaza and Israel. Conversely, peace is essential for the flourishing of democracy. In peaceful environments, democratic institutions can function effectively. And here's how peace strengthens democracy. Peaceful conditions allow governments, for example, to focus on development and good governance rather than conflict. This stability is essential for democratic institutions to operate efficiently. In times of peace, citizens are more likely to engage in political processes, participate in elections, and contribute to public discourse. Active citizen participation is the lifeblood of democracy. And we need to encourage this, especially in our youth, so they learn the importance of making your voice heard in a democratic way, and not violent protests, but using the right to vote. And I think we had some very interesting reflections from Hannah, how we need to have more representation of youth in our parliaments and also in the European Parliament. Peaceful societies experience steady economic growth and which supports democratic governance. Prosperity enables better education, healthcare, and infrastructure, further strengthening democratic institutions. And last, social cohesion. Peace fosters social cohesion, reducing polarization and extremism. A united society is more capable of addressing challenges through democratic means rather than resorting to violence. And this is why peace is so important for democracy. But we have challenges. Despite the clear benefits, both democracy and peace face significant challenges today. Rising authoritarianism, political polarization, economic inequality, they all threaten democratic institutions. And meanwhile, conflicts, terrorism, and human rights abuses disrupt peace globally. Addressing these challenges requires a concerted effort from all of us. We must support democratic movement. We must advocate for human rights. We must promote inclusive development. International cooperation is vital in addressing transnational threats and supporting nations in their democratic transitions. And I think we should take inspiration from the businesses and entrepreneurial side of society. Politicians have a lot to learn here, and I think this would benefit countries. I know we have a mixed group of people here today, so I'm especially addressing the politicians. I think we need to make more economic decisions and think like business leaders and not just like politicians, only trying to be re-elected. Global institutions play a crucial role in promoting democracy and peace. The United Nations, for instance, works to prevent conflicts, protect human rights, and support democratic governance. Regional organizations also contribute by fostering cooperation and dialogue among neighboring countries. However, these institutions must be strengthened and reformed to address the evolving challenges of the 21st century. Greater accountability, increased funding, and enhanced coordination are essential for these bodies to fulfill their mandates effectively. In conclusion, democracy and peace are not just ideals to be aspired to. They are practical necessities for the well-being of nations and the global community. As we move forward, let us remember that the fight for democracy is also a fight for peace. By nurturing democratic values, protecting human rights, and promoting inclusive development, we can build a more peaceful and prosperous world for future generations. And let's change this trend of declining number of democracies. Let's start working together more efficiently to increase them instead. Thank you for your attention, and may you all work together to uphold the principles of democracy and peace.
Thank you very much. So we
Thank
would
you.
welcome your questions and your reflections. As always, if you can keep it brief, we'll try to keep the responses brief. We can hear even more voices. So I see Hannah already has her hand up. And those of you who are joining us via Zoom, feel free to jump in too. And Esteban, could you arrange the PowerPoint for the next speaker while we take questions? Please. Because we have a time issue.
Thank you. Thank you for the speech. I have a question on how does Sweden, in your opinion, tackle extremism and populism? What are some good practices you would suggest to other countries as well?
Well, since 2015, we have had a huge immigration from MENA countries. We have always had a huge work immigration to Sweden from the 60s and onwards, but people who came then were willing to adapt to the Swedish society, learn the language, and get involved and work. A lot of people that have come in the past 10 years have not done that. They have kept their focus on their religion and their values, not choosing to be involved in Swedish society, and that has resulted in involving themselves instead in extremism. Sweden was one of the countries that had most people going and joining the ISIS state and fight for that. And also we have a huge problem with gang criminality, and they're recruiting very, very young people, as young as 12 years old, to commit crimes, because in Sweden we don't really have harsh punishments for young people. We have a new government since 2 years back who are working on addressing these problems, but it's a very long process and it's going slow. And I think around the world people still see Sweden as a very safe place, but unfortunately that is not the case today.
Additional questions, comments? Also, those joining us via Zoom. Okay, in the back of the room. And if you could stand, please, so we can hear you better.
Hi. Thank you, first of all, for your speech. I'm wondering how the cultural differences between Nordic European countries would translate these measures into the rest of Europe and perhaps the global South, seeing the difference in culture and language in other areas. Thank you.
Well, Sweden, Norway, and Denmark have very similar language, and we can understand each other. Finnish, on the other hand, is completely different. Traditionally, we have a lot of common values. We have a lot of people that live in the border areas between our countries, so they may live in one country and work in another. I live in the south of Sweden, and a lot of people go to Denmark to work. But same thing here. Sweden has been a bit too generous when it comes to immigration, while Finland, Norway, and Denmark have been more restrictive. So today they kind of look at Sweden as a bad example.
Is there a final question or comment? Okay, well then if not, then please join me in expressing our sincere gratitude once again for the presentation.
Thank you.